In this video, I guess more appropriately, you are going to be writing two test cases that verify patch works as expected. We're going to take one to-do that's not completed and make it complete, and we'll take a second one that is complete and make it incomplete. Now, in order to do that, we are going to need to tweak the seed data we have in our server test file. The seed data right here is two to-do items. Neither of them have the completed property specified, which means it's going to default to false. For the second item, we're going to go ahead and set it. We're going to set completed equal to true, and we're also going to set completed at equal to whatever value we want. You can choose any number at all. I'm going to go ahead and use 333. Now we have two to-dos that are going to let us toggle both ways. To get started, down below, I will help you create the describe and it block so we're on the same page there, but you will be responsible for filling out the actual test cases. This video is basically going to be a challenge because we've done a lot of this stuff before. First up, the describe block. We're going to describe this group of tests. We'll use the method followed by the URL to do just that. Then we can go ahead and add our function, and in here, we can define our two test cases. The first test is going to take our first to-do and set its text equal to something else, and we'll change completed from false to true. It should update the to-do. We can provide our function with the done argument right here, and I'll leave some comments inside in just a moment to give you an idea as to how I'd like you to accomplish this. The second test is going to be for toggling that second to-do where the completed value is already equal to true. Right here, it should clear completed at when to-do is not completed. Perfect. This test case is going to make sure that when we go ahead and remove the completed status, setting it equal to false, completed at gets cleared. Now for the first test case, what you're going to do is grab the ID of the first item, grab ID of first item. And then you're going to make our patch request. You're going to provide the proper URL with the ID inside of it, and you're going to use send to send some data along as the request body. For this one, I want you to update the text, set it equal to whatever you like, and you're going to set completed equal to true. Now, once you send that off, you'll be ready to make your assertions, and you're going to make one assertion using the basic system, assert that you get a 200 back, and you're going to make one custom assertion. The custom assertion is going to verify that the response body has a text property equal to the text you sent in. Text is changed. You're going to verify that completed is true, and you're also going to verify that completed at is a number. And you can use the toBA method available inside of expect to get that done. Now for the second test, we're going to do something similar, but we're just going to go in the other direction. We're going to grab, this should be grab, not grad, grab ID of second to-do item. You're going to update the text to something different, and you're going to set completed to false. Then you can make your assertions. Once again, we will be expecting a 200 for this one, and we will be expecting that the response body now represents those changes. Text is changed to whatever you happen to pick. I also want you to check that completed is now false, and to check that completed at is null. And you can use the toNotExist method available on expect to make that assertion. This is what you need to do to complete the test suite. Once you're done, I want you to run npm test and make sure both test cases pass. If they do, you're good to go. If they don't, go ahead and tweak things around. Feel free to use any code we wrote in any of the projects to get this challenge done. That goes with every other challenge as well. You can also use Google or Stack Overflow. That is not cheating. It's called being resourceful, and it's what real developers do every single day. So take a moment, knock this out, make sure that the proper data comes back based on the data you send in, and when you're done, you can go ahead and click play. How'd you do? I know this one was a little open-ended, but hopefully you were able to get both test cases set up. Let's fill out the first test case first, and I'll kick things off by grabbing the proper ID. Let's make a variable called hexID, setting it equal to the first to-dos underscore ID property, and we're going to call toHexString. To get this string back, we can pass in to the URL. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and create some dummy text. This will be the new updated text. Let's make a variable called text and set it equal to whatever you like. This should be the new text. Now we can go ahead and actually make our request using request to our Express application. We will be using the patch method. Hopefully you were able to figure that out on your own. If you weren't, maybe you use the documentation for Supertest, since I did not explicitly tell you how to make that patch call. Next up, we are going to be using a template string as our URL, /todos, / then we're going to inject the hex ID. Now, before we can make our assertions, we do need to send some data along as well. So I'll call send, passing in the data. This is going to be the things we want to change. For this test, we did want to set completed equal to true. I'm going to set completed equal to true, and we do want to update the text. So I'll set the text equal to the text variable up above, and I can always leave off this part using ES6. Now that we have send in place, we can start making our assertions. The first one's easy. We're just expecting a 200. I'm going to expect a 200 to be the return status code. And before we add our custom assertion, we can call end, passing in done. Now, the last thing we need to do is make those assertions about the data coming back. Right here, I'm going to call expect, passing in a function. This function, as we know by now, gets called with the response, and we can make our custom assertions. We're going to make an assertion about text, completed, and completed at. First up, the text. We're expecting that the response.body.todo.text property equals, using to be, the text variable we defined up above. If this is equal to the data that came back, then we're good to go. Next up, let's make some assertions about that completed property. We're going to expect that the response body to do has a completed property and that it's true, using to be true. We set it to true right here, so it should have changed from false to true. Now, the last assertion we're going to make inside of our custom expect call is going to be an assertion about completed at, making sure it's a number. We're going to expect response body to do dot completed at equals a number, using to be a, inside of quotes, the type number. With this in place, our first test is now complete. We can go ahead and remove those comments and actually verify it's working by running it over in the terminal. Our second test is going to fail. That's fine as long as the first one passes. We're good to continue on. I'm going to run npm test. This is going to fire off the test suite. We can see our first patch test succeeds. This is the one we just filled out, and our second one fails. We're getting a timeout after 2 seconds, which is expected because we never call done. Now that the first one's in place, though, we can go ahead and fill out the second one. Now, the code for these two tests is going to be really, really similar. Now, since we just wrote this code and we know exactly what it does, we can copy and paste it. I'm not a fan of copying and pasting code I don't understand, but I am a fan of being efficient. Since I know what this code does, I can paste it right in here, and now we can go ahead and make some changes. Instead of grabbing the hex ID for the first to-do item, we want to grab the hex ID for the second to-do item. And then the next thing we need to do is update the data we're sending. We don't want to set completed equal to true. We already did that manually up above. This one we're trying to set to false. We are also going to update the text so we can leave that in place. I'm going to go ahead and tweak the text value a little bit, adding a couple exclamation marks on the end. Next up, the assertions. We're still expecting a 200 to be the status code that comes back. That part's great. And we are still expecting the text to equal the text. For completed, though, we're expecting that to be false, and we're not expecting completed at to be a number. It was a number originally, but after this update, it should have gotten cleared since the to-do is no longer completed. We can use to not exist to assert that completed at doesn't exist. With this in place, our test case is done. We can now delete those comments, save the file, and rerun things from the terminal. I'm going to rerun the test suite, and what do we get? We get both of our patch tests passing. Now, as you've probably noticed, for Patch, we didn't write those test cases for invalid object IDs or object IDs not found. You could add those, but we've done them so many times so far, I don't see that as a necessary exercise. These two test cases, though, they do validate that our Patch method is working as expected, especially when it comes to the slightly more complex logic that Patch required to get everything done. With this in place, though, we are done testing our last route. We can go ahead and make a commit and move on to the final video of this section, which is coming up next. Over in the terminal, I'm going to run git status. Here I see I have one modified file, my server test file, which looks great. I can use git commit with the AM flag to make the commit. Add tests for patch /todos/ID. I'm going to go ahead and make that commit. Then I'll take a moment to push it up to GitHub, and with that in place, we are done. I'll see you in the next video, which is the last one for this section, where you will learn how to use a separate test database locally, so you're not always wiping your data in the development database as you run your tests. That's coming up next, so stay tuned. I will see you then.